All right. Hello, all. Dr. Andrew Von Plitt here again with another live stream. Going to be answering some questions, excuse me, from another video or another two videos potentially. I think they're both from the same video. Yeah. So we're just going to go through those and keep it pretty short, wrap things up pretty quickly. So the first question that we're going to be discussing today is from my last live stream video where I talked a little bit in response to a question regarding training barefoot during Tai Chi training. And a user named Guy Green 7188 posted this comment/question, and Guy Green is also a subscriber. So thank you, Guy, for being a subscriber to this channel, and thank you to all the subscribers out there. Really appreciate the support. Let's see. Guy says, "What is your view on grounding the body with bare feet on the grass, soil, or sand on the beach? The earth chi is absorbed much better if we are grounded in this way. It has been powerful effect on it has a powerful effect. My mouth will say what I'm reading here. A powerful effect in the body. And wouldn't it be even more beneficial to do Tai Chi and Qigong practice with this extra connection to the Qi? And a guy also posted a link in this video to it looked like a doc. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched part of it, but it's basically a discussion about earthing and some of the benefits that people have experienced from practicing earthing. So for those of you who are not familiar with earthing, sometimes called grounding, it's basically, my understanding of it is basically you go outside onto some sort of natural ground. So it wouldn't be like concrete or pavement or something like that. It would be dirt or grass or basically some natural connection, so naturally occurring ground. So you do that and you do it barefoot, and you use that connection. The idea is the concept is that the earth is negatively charged, and as people become more inflamed, they become more positively charged, and when you stand on the ground, it kind of helps rebalance the body's charge. I have not looked into research around this, so I don't have comments as far as what the science says about it so far, but I mean, it doesn't seem completely unreasonable to me. And a lot of people report having really excellent effects from practicing grounding and earthing. So I think if it's helping you, that's wonderful. When it comes to practicing Taiji and Qigong barefoot, this is something that I actually didn't get into in the last video when I was talking about potential downsides or upsides to practicing barefoot. And in that video, I was thinking more about the safety, like the type of ground you're practicing on. Are you potentially going to hurt your feet by being on that ground? But something that is also an important thing to consider, especially from a somewhat traditional perspective in training, is, at least the way I was taught, is when you're practicing Qigong or Tai Chi, you want very few outside influences that could potentially upset your body. And what I mean is, you wouldn't want to practice in very, very cold weather, or you wouldn't want to practice in extremely hot weather. You wouldn't want to practice in windy weather. The idea is that when you're doing Tai Chi or Qigong, your body's channels are very open. And so with that opening of the channels, you're more likely to have those channels invaded by outside forces. So get cold invasion or wind invasion, things like that. And those are more terms related to Chinese medicine. So there's not a great analogous term that I could think of for more of a Western medicine perspective. But we do know that from research that when you're in cold environments, breathing cold air, it does tend to reduce the immune system's function on the mucosal lining of the airway, which is why people tend to get infections more easily, colds and so forth, in colder weather. And so from that perspective, that also makes sense. So I'm getting kind of off track here, but basically what I'm getting at is, from the training that I've received, the perspective that I would say is, if you're training on ground that is fairly neutral in temperature, you're not training in like very cold ground or very hot ground, then I think it's, that would be ideal. If you're going to be training on cold ground, there is potential for that to be kind of depleting to the body. And if you're training on hot ground, then there's potential for that to be somewhat more, I don't know if I want to say inflammatory, but more stimulating, I guess I could say, to the body. And this is something that I noticed when I was first starting to learn. I never really liked training barefoot for many reasons, but one of the reasons after reading this question that I kind of remembered thinking about here is I found that when I would train barefoot, very often the ground was cold. And if I was especially feeling depleted, like if I had just finished a very, rigorous training day or something like that, and I was just feeling like kind of uh, depleted, training on the cold ground would always make my feet, my ankles, and sometimes all the way up to my knees feel very stiff and achy. And that's a good example of what you want to avoid. So you really have to pay attention to what your personal state is. Do you feel depleted? Do you feel energetic? Do you feel healthy? Do you feel like you have excess of energy or depletion of energy? And use that to kind of gauge if you're going to be training in different types of environments barefoot. Um, because I'm not a Chinese medicine practitioner, I went ahead and talked to a couple Chinese medicine practitioners about this concept, including my wife, because she's an amazing Chinese medicine practitioner. And the concerns that basically were voiced then is if very similar to what I was saying is like if your body's in a depleted state, then your ideal time of training would be in warm weather when the ground's warm. So toward the end of the day when the sun's been shining on the ground and it's not too hot where it's going to burn your feet, but it's still warm, so it's giving that warmth to your feet, to your body when you're training, that would be an ideal time for someone who's in a depleted state to train barefoot outside. Excuse me. And then, of course, the reverse is true if someone is in a very excess state. So they have a lot of excess heat in the body. Training on cooler ground would be more ideal because that would be more grounding and it would help bring down that kind of inflammatory state for them. So there's a little bit more to it than just grounding is great for everyone, at least from the Chinese medicine perspective that I discussed with Chinese medicine practitioners, and from the training perspective that I was taught. So I guess an answer to that question is, would it be better? I think, you know, sometimes yes and sometimes no. Training barefoot on the ground for all the reasons that I just discussed. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question. Yeah, I don't think I have more to say about that, but if that wasn't clear or if you have more questions about that, please put them in the comments and I will try to come back to it and visit that again. Um, so there you have it. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next question here. And this question is on the same video, last live stream that I did. And this question is from Cat B78, who is a supporting member. Thank you, Cat, for being a supporting member. Really appreciate it. And Kat says, I have a question. A neighbor of mine is teaching Qigong and Tai Chi, and she told me that in China, people are expected to do 2 years of Qigong before even starting Tai Chi. Is that so? And if yes, would you recommend it as well? Parentheses, please say no, please say no. So I understand that sentiment. It's not a very exciting prospect to just do Qigong for years before you actually get into your Tai Chi training. But that is a very traditional approach. That is definitely kind of, if you're going to be very traditional in your training, that's a very traditional way of doing it, is just doing your standing post Qigong for 1 to 2 years, sometimes more, before you actually get into Taiji training and movement patterns. So the idea with that is you're just establishing a really excellent foundation in your structure, your frame. You're developing your internal energy, your chi, your force through that training so that you have it available to use when you're doing, Taiji training and your structure's already in place. I did not follow this course because I did not have that much time in China. And I would say it, like the need for this kind of depends, and this is my opinion, kind of depends on what you're planning to do with your training. If you're doing it for health, if you're doing it for enjoyment, you're not planning to be like, this isn't going to be like your what you do for the rest of your life sort of a thing, then I think it's diverging a little bit from that traditional approach is not such a big deal. If you are starting as a kiddo or fairly young and you're wanting to do this the rest of your life, you want to be an instructor and this is all you're going to do, sure, go ahead and take the more traditional route and do just Qigong for your first year or two and then go into other training. This is probably not going to be a very popular opinion, and this is my opinion. But I honestly don't think that's necessarily the best approach. And the reason I say that is because in order to build the right frame, the right centers of focus, um, you need some sort of feedback on how your frame is doing. And if you're doing this, of course, with an instructor in person, it's a lot easier to get that. And that, of course, is the ideal way to train. But if you are just doing solo training, you're just doing standing post Qigong, you will get a lot out of that. But I feel that you get good at what you do. And if what you're wanting to be good at is standing, then that's going to build a good foundation for that. And part of that is really useful in Tai Chi because when you start push hands, one of the first things that you need to learn is how to maintain your structure and maintain your center while exchanging force, with an opponent or a training partner. And knowing how to stand is going to basically be useful because you'll know how to maintain yourself and stand instead of getting pushed over. So yes, that's directly applicable and really useful. But at the same time, there's more to what's going on in that exchange. And if what you're wanting to do is practice Tai Chi to get as much out of the Tai Chi that you can, really you need the feedback from a partner pushing on your frame to let you know, is my frame anywhere close to what it needs to be or is it not? And so my perspective is you're going to be bad at all of it in the beginning. That's just how learning is. Like very few people pick it up right away and are just excellent at it from day one. And so understanding that you're going to be bad at the standing post Qigong, you're going to be bad at the push hands, you're going to be bad at the form at the beginning, why would you not want to advance those things together since they all support one another instead of starting with just one and then having to start from scratch again and then having to start from scratch again. And so I would think it was different uh, if you couldn't get something out of the form training, you couldn't get something out of the push hands training without having done the standing post Qigong. But just from my experience, I don't think that's the case. So that's not to say that the standing post Qigong is not important, just because you don't necessarily need to do it for a year or two before you do anything else. It is something that should definitely be a part of your training. And I think the three things should be trained together: your form, your standing post, and your push hands. And again, that's my opinion. But I feel like that's how humans learn well, is by doing the things that they're trying to be good at or trying to get good at. And so that's the only way you're going to get good at the form. The only way you're going to get good at push hands is by doing them. So yeah, that's my perspective on that. So I would say, no, you don't have to. My opinion, traditional approach, which is fairly tried and true. So, there's that. Would say yes, you want to do 1 to 2 years of just the qigong. And one of the reasons that that's not used very stringently, in especially the United States and other parts of the world outside of China, is because most people won't stick to the qigong for 1 to 2 years before actually getting into Tai Chi. And so if someone's running a school, if they're trying to run a class and nobody comes back because they're tired of just standing there, that makes it very difficult to run a school or teach a class. So you have to keep people engaged at the same time too. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, because it depends on what the person's wanting to get out of it. If they're just wanting to feel better, they're wanting to have more flexibility, have better balance, be healthier, why would you make them stand for 2 years before you actually give them other tools to achieve that goal? So like I said, depends on what you want to get out of it. So I think I'm veering off into just rambling now instead of actually giving useful information. So I'm going to wrap that question up. I hope that answers your question well enough, and we're going to call it good with that one. So those are the questions that I was planning to address today. And I think there are a few other questions further back that I have seen, but I have not got to yet. So hopefully sometime next week, no promises, but hopefully sometime next week, I'll be able to get to those. So that wraps up the Q&A portion of this video. As in the previous two videos, I am going to talk about a product that if you purchase from my website, andrew.puretrim.com, will help support this channel, and hopefully you will get something very enjoyable out of using that product as well. So last video, I talked about a product called Joint Tea and discussed how that's very beneficial, or can be very beneficial. I found it very beneficial for me in supporting my joint health because of certain injuries and overtraining that I had done in the past. And how that combined with Tai Chi was very useful, and I basically don't have those joint problems that I had before. So something that's good news and bad news, I suppose, is just yesterday, Pure Trim, the company that makes these products, announced that they are coming out with a new product, which is replacing the joint tee. So for any of you who are interested in trying the joint tee, it's a little too late now. So that product's no longer there, but they replaced it with, instead of a tea where you basically take a powder and mix it with water, you basically take a pill. So it's a little bit easier for some people if they prefer that. And if they prefer the tea, you can just open the capsule into warm water. But the whole idea with it is same thing, anti-inflammatory herbs, plant stem cells to help encourage regeneration of tissue, and plants that have really excellent phenolic compounds that are important for the body's healing and lowering inflammation and improving function of connective tissue. So all that to say, the new product is called Joint Control, and it will be available, I believe, sometime next week. So I don't have a link directly to that product down in this video description, but if you are interested in finding out more about it, you can either send me a message and I will send you a link to a video that discusses it a little bit more, or you can wait until it's available on the website and you can just go take a look at it. So that's the product I'm talking about today. I haven't tried it myself yet. I am planning to, just because I like to try things before I make too much in the way of recommendations on them. And of course, I do get kickback from any orders that are made on that website. So this is definitely biased information coming from me, but I do want to acknowledge that so that you all know where I'm coming from with that. So that's what I have to say about that. If you have any questions on that, please put them in the comments below. If you have any follow-up questions about the standing post Qigong for 1 to 2 years prior to Taiji training, or the earthing / training barefoot while practicing Tai Chi or Qigong, please put those questions in the comments below. And if you have any other questions, please put those in the comments below and I will try to get to them in the near future. I wish you all the best. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for your interest in Tai Chi and Qigong, and have a wonderful weekend.